Hello from the Yucatan. My name is Rachael Mamane, a James Beard nominated author, chef, and advisor in global food systems. I'm sad to miss you in Spain, but I am honored to be here. Currently a US citizen based in Mexico, I have plans to move to Portugal when life becomes closer to normal. Today I am presenting what I hope will become thesis work positioned from the EU, and my goal is to further a collaborative network across the globe. So please do get in touch if this proposal interests you. Thank you. For the past 10 years, my focus has been on creating farm-based models that minimize agricultural waste and keep food in our system longer. I started a value-added company in 2010 that helped farmers increase their return on lesser used goods like bones or ugly vegetables in the Hudson Valley. The company featured culinary stocks, a staple that every chef knows to be the foundation of flavor. Unfortunately, the wellness industry turned the story into a fad that bone broths are the cure to many ailments without the science to back it up. This is a story we've heard since the 1800s. Collagen and gelatin continue to fascinate. At first, I was upset that the consumer audience could be so easily duped. But upon embarking on historical research about food and nutrition, I realized that misguided information has political origins. Consumers are curious, but there are competing interests. Change will be slow. It requires a methodical approach. And so today I will present an idea that looks to the past, lives in the present, and outlines a perspective for the future. Like so many chefs, I am obsessed with flavor, how to enhance it, where it comes from, why it exists. It quickly becomes esoteric, like that movie Inception, where you can dream within a dream. But we live in a world where a chef's reputation can be ruined for scraping mold off low sugar jam, while other chefs are glorified for making miso or cheese or charcuterie, where mold is a known part of the process. Confusion exists in the gray areas, largely designed by government bodies wary of risk and corporations that control the narrative. Our science is young, so much so that we're still adding base flavors to our charts. Umami is only now a household word. The flavor, like chasing a dream before waking. And in some ways, I suppose this proposal is too. Nevertheless, let's dive in together. The idea is very simple: to develop a collaborative repository of preservation that advances food safety across the globe. The process is to document old world preservation methods, connect them with contemporary technology to identify risks, improve safety protocols, and to illustrate applied methods that keep food in the system longer. The crux is this: most of the culinary labs that exist now endeavor to feed wealthy clients, to invent heavily processed foods that inspire cravings, or to foster corporate interests from the soil to the plate. There are few official culinary labs that operate to advance food supply or to improve nutritional science. Some of the barriers to entry are the cost to legally operate a lab or experimental kitchen. In the US and other parts of the world, the burden of proof is on the producer. If you can afford to prove its safety, then you and you alone can replicate the process. Meanwhile, heavily resourced corporations guide perception around wellness standards. Marketing is often designed to misguide the consumer. The history of sugar is a great example. Tobacco, another. Likewise, corporations often have more resources to pay for targeted nutritional feedback that supports their goals. This means that objective nutritional science is limited to institutions that may not have the same pull with public opinion. The result is consumers who want to be healthy, but are fed too much conflicting information to make rational choices. The opportunity is collaborative in a way that research crosses cultures and disciplines, and resulting information is disseminated in both an open source platform and a subscription-based model. Access to information is based on risk and liability, reasonably assessed among experts, including food safety advisors, which would further safeguard sensitive data. We would take a scientific approach to collectively serve the global culinary industry by assembling a global team of industry experts, identifying methods and concepts across cultures, documenting an illustrated history, the science, safety, and application of each method, sharing an open source mechanism for low-risk methods, and launching a subscription model for high-risk methods. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a future slide. The global team of industry experts intends to build a living database of preservation methods, safety protocols, and contemporary applications. This means that food historians will research origins and purpose of methods. Illustrators will illustrate ingredients and processes. Food scientists will identify applied science in nutrition. Microbiologists will evaluate safety protocols and identify risks, while farmers can share agricultural techniques and chefs can share culinary applications associated with these methods. Producers will outline scheduled processes, and together we will work with food safety advisors to define risk. The purpose of each entry is for experts to collectively document these methods. The illustrations and recipes will be included for each entry, and a final measure of risk will be identified to determine placement in the open source or subscription model as a means to disseminate information in a responsible manner. A colleague of mine and I have put together what one entry might look like. This may change, but this is an idea of the order in which information would be organized. My favorite example is aged butter. My father is Moroccan. Aged butter has fascinated me since I was a child. So first we would look at the history of aged butter, the definition, origin, purpose, perception, and application at a high level. Then we would dig into the science of aged butter, the molecular breakdown, effects of oxidation, intentional rancidity, influence from soil, and flavor profiles. Nutrition is fairly straightforward. We would assess the standard portion size and look at its composition, and then compare it to other types of butter, normal butter, cultured butter, animal fats, so on and so forth. Then we would look at the safety, which would comprise of best practices for sourcing, handling, preparation, storing, and also covering hazards and precautions. The applications could include farming techniques, looking at different types of value-added products, energy implications, and waste considerations. Chefs would bring together recipes. In this case, we would look at Moroccan aged butter, Irish bog butter, tallow aged butter using grass-fed butter, and another variation like Tibetan butter tea. Scheduled processes would be defined, and a risk level would also be assessed. The risk levels would go into what the current standards are, our assessment, and then a legal assessment associated with the risk of pursuing this in your kitchen. The current code name for the project is Atlas Alimenta. It intends to function as a global collective of food system experts who work to improve the current and future state of our universal food economy. A website will host the technology that contains the repository. The goals are to preserve old world methods as a living database, to connect new technologies for the advancement of safety and nutrition, and to act as a collective change agent for improved policies at the government level. Next steps include a call for participants, which will be published online on the perspectives page of the Preserve Journal. We will identify subject matter experts and organize a virtual assembly. We're currently evaluating universities that would be good to host this thesis work. And we will look to organizational sponsors who are aligned with our mission and values. The call for participation. This is the exciting part. We are looking to fill the following roles duplicated across cultures and disciplines: food historians, culinary illustrators, food scientists, microbiologists, farmers, chefs, butchers, perhaps my favorite, older generation cooks, fermentation specialists, value-added producers, food safety experts, and food policy advisors. The project will be voluntary to start, with the potential to grow into a profit-sharing model. And together, we will define the mission and parameters for growth. To end, I'll quote Alice Walker: "Look closely at the present you are constructing. It should look like the future you are dreaming." With that, thank you so much for your attention today, and I hope you enjoy the Congress. I'm sorry to miss you in person, and I hope to meet you in person one day soon. If you would like to participate, you can reach me at my personal email address, rmamane@gmail.com, or you can send an email to info@atlasalimenta.com. Thank you again for your time.
Okay, thank you very much, Rachel. I'm so sorry about that. Lots of problems with the sound and everything. But finally, well, I think everything was all right finally. If you agree, please, and as we are a half an hour delayed, we can do all the questions at the end if we have the time. Do you agree with that?
Well, since it's 3 a.m. where I'm at, there's not a very good likelihood
we
that
have the time for some questions. It doesn't matter.
I mean, people can email me as well in the interest of time. But
is there any questions? We can do.
No,
that.
not any questions. I just want to say that I found it really interesting, and I will be happy to talk about it because I found it really, really interesting. So thank you very much, Rachel.
Thank you, Carolina.
I agree with that comment.
And thank you.
I do have a question. This project that you're working on is supposed to be like archival material, or what is like the aim in the future, so that is public, that is going to be sold? Because I work with the preservation methods in Sweden, and here is a very in the Nordic culture with the Sami people. I don't know if you're familiar with, but it's the original native people of the North Pole, and they have a lot of preservation methods that are very antique and very interesting. And I was wondering, like, for example, if that was something that we will want to, for example, share or something, what is the end goal, may I say, to this research?
Yes. So first of all, the preservation methodology that you're referring to, I know nothing about, and it sounds like it's a perfect potential for placement within this repository, because it intends to cross many cultures, and the output trending with modern technology would be that the lower risk methods, the processes that we define as lower risk, can be put into an open source format to be shared freely. And then those methods that carry a higher risk would then be rolled into a subscription model, perhaps for institutions, to be disseminated to food science students and other people within the chain of the participants. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and is this research connected to some university or research center or?
Not at the moment. Because it's a longer explanation, and I'll do my best to keep it brief. I am currently based out of Mexico as a U.S. citizen who is in the process of getting my reclamation citizenship to Portugal, which will position me, my roots are in Spain and Morocco, so it will position me right in the middle. And so I'm currently speaking with universities in both Spain and Portugal about placement for this thesis work.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you very much, Rachel. We are over the time, so our excuses. And now it's time for Julia Carrillo.
Yes, but I think I'm afraid that I'm gonna have the same problem. I'm gonna try to share my screen.
I don't think so. Just try.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it seems like it's okay.
Yes.
Yes, great. Okay.
So, the floor is yours.
Yes, just give me a second. Yeah, so everybody sees my slides and hear my voice clearly? Perfect, thank you. So good morning, my name is Julia Carrillo and I'm a PhD student at the School of Hospitality and Meal Science at Örebro University in Sweden. And I'm presenting my paper on conservation, preservation, and storage strategies for sustainable gastronomy in Swedish restaurants. The article idea started by two main questions. How can food conservation reveal the meaning and value of sustainable gastronomy? And how does Nordic food culture influence storage and preservation practices in restaurants? So for starters, food storage and preservation practices have shaped human history and food culture, but have been insufficiently tackled from a sustainability perspective. And restaurants, on the other hand, are an interesting point of departure as they are in between the household consumption and the food industry at large, and are also regarded as hubs of culture that influence consumption at large. Storage practices in restaurants are under-researched. The main body of studies is regarded in efficiency and the safety of the practices, but there is very little research about the day-to-day practices and the role they play in the restaurant work. And within the Nordic food culture, storage and preservation is especially relevant as this region has stark winters, and this diminishes the variety of fresh products available locally. But in later decades, the perception of this constraint has changed, and instead of regarding this as a hinder, it has been understood as a motivation for creativity, to impulse seasonal and local products, and to revive traditional methods of preservation. So my aim is to explore the role of preservation and conservation practices within the Nordic food culture, and as part of sustainable gastronomy strategies in Sweden restaurants. 6 restaurants from different locations within Sweden participated. I performed 18 semi-structured interviews with management, kitchen, and dining room personnel. And I also performed observations that consisted of walk-alongs through a storage facility, delivery handling, and mise en place. The material has been collected during October 2019 to September 2020, so I just recently finished, which entails that I started before the Corona crisis and followed the restaurants as the restriction took place, which, for example, hindered that I could observe delivery handling and mise en place at all the restaurants due to the concern about safety, but also gave me the opportunity to see the shift in narratives. The analysis is being performed at the moment by qualitative data coding, and what I'm presenting today is my preliminary results. So I spotted three different strategies. And the first one is less meat, more vegetables. As you can observe in the pictures that are from the restaurant I studied, I show an air cellar and on the top, as you can see in the slide, and a meat aging fridge. And they both materialize this strategy. An air cellar, for those who doesn't know, is a traditional, somehow underground cellar with no electricity, but which construction is done in a way that it holds a constant cool temperature all year long. And it's mainly used for vegetable preserves like traditional Nordic pickles and as a dry storage. This kind of storage was used before even the cold chain was available here in Nordic countries. In contrast to this traditional storage and having the same function of achieving this strategy of less meat, I present as well a meat aging fridge on the bottom. And this meat aging fridge comes with modern technology. So it's both traditional and modern technology that ensure the aging of the meat uniformly, so to have more quality, but less quantity of the meat served. This strategy is based in the cuisine philosophy. This means the way every restaurant describes their food philosophy and cuisine style. Three main characteristics were found. First, the use of seasonal products for freshness and the value networks of working with the small producers. Second, a serving style based on dishes with eliminated or reduced meat portion size, even when meat is at the center stage. This philosophy embraces aesthetics that value the different shapes a carrot, for example, can have, and are aware of being congruent with their philosophy from planning and purchasing to waste management. Third, the use of preserves using both new and old techniques, like Nordic pickling for berries, cucumber, and herring, and using traditional spaces for doing them, instead of buying fresh products from regions where they are off season, from far away regions when these products are off season. The second strategy is storing local quality. The storage spaces here are the ones keeping the quality, or in some cases increasing it through preservation and aging practices, or even used for harvesting. One discovery I made through my walk-alongs at the restaurant was that a storage room was being used to micro-growing, as they call it, or to grow sprouts and microgreens. This is the two pictures that you see on the top. These microgreens that were then used in the kitchen as part of the culture, embodying the hyper-local trend. Another example is the earth cellar that it was in another establishment, different from the one you see previously. And they used it to age cheese that was purchased locally. So they were the guardians of keeping this quality, but also increasing it through maturation process, and also represented the region. This strategy is based in the way of production of ingredients and products, purchases, and or grown, as you can see in this micro-growing cellar. It was expressed by all the participants that is a strong connection between origin and quality, and that this quality was measured in the distinct better taste and flavor in comparison with products brought from far away. This strategy was also found in the beliefs surrounding certified food items, and its connection to eating clean or without toxin or contaminants. And however, local was most of the time considered better than organic from far away, as most of them claim that they can be sure of the way their neighbor produce. This was also associated with an ethic way of production that was seen as important as being organic by most participants. And it also was found that they feel a proudness of being supporting the local. The third strategy is the innovative restaurant professional. This connected to the storage spaces in a way that knowledgeable personnel have the skills to manage different raw materials that need to be stored in special storage spaces. By taking a look to the two pictures I present here, one is from a wine cellar that is managed by a skilled sommelier who have the knowledge to assure the proper conditions of the aging process. By knowing, for example, when a wine is ready to be drank, and most importantly, if a wine has a defect, especially when there is a large investment and a bottle cannot just be returned by the consumer because they didn't like it, but it's the sommelier who has the final saying of the quality. It is also the sommelier who can decide to buy non-conventional wine presentations, for example, draft wine, who has a lower CO2 impact and uses recyclable materials, and it's very popular among biodynamic and organic wines, as it agrees with this way of producing. The other picture exemplifies the opposite. While the restaurant have separate fridges for the products and food items used for the lunch and dinner service, which is at the same time performed by the skilled kitchen staff, what we see in this picture is the breakfast fridge, which is used by the staff, which only responsibility is the breakfast buffet, mostly served in hotels. They are not part of the kitchen brigade, but part of the front of the house personnel. So in the same fridge, there is dairy, fruit, cold cuts, and one can assume that the cooks don't want an intruder in their dominions. The fridges that the cooks use are one for each product. For example, one for dairy, one for meat, one for cold cuts. This strategy is based in the human factor, the importance of the type of staff that is needed to be able to work sustainably, and their expertise. This expertise was expressed as craftsmanship and as the need to be innovative and imaginative, to be able, for example, to work with the whole product in the case of vegetables, using not only, for example, the beetroot, but also the leaves and the stems, by developing new ways of using the whole product and not see the other part as weight, but as different raw material that also has gastronomic potential. The use of the whole animal was also commented. However, it's interesting to point out that in the Swedish imaginary, when we talk about the whole animal, you never talk about organs, you never talk about the head, you never talk about the tongue. Even if they claim to buy the whole animal, they are only talking about the meat parts of the animals.
Definitely.
So the innovative professional is also the one who makes the right choices. And this is quite interesting, has the will to work sustainably. This last mentioned by most of the participants as one of the most important aspects to work sustainably, along with having knowledge. Other things were thought as secondary. So the main difference is that within an innovative and imaginative professional, the restaurants have the means to work with ingredients from scratch, think outside of the box, and therefore in need for specialized storage spaces. On the opposite scenario, when there is not a skilled professional working, already made products such as sauces or pre-cut vegetables are bought, so there is not need for large and various storage spaces. So in the strategies and beliefs that were spotted in this study, it is visible that there is a permeation of the ideals of the new Nordic food movement that has reached the restaurant industry at large. And one element is the traditional preservation techniques achieving more status. The same values and practices that are promoted in their manifesto are visible in their narratives, whether or not they are enacted fully, as there was also some discrepancy of what was said to what was done. This was more visible as the corona crisis began. The contradictions were due mainly to the economic pressures of the corona crisis, which delineated a clear struggles between sustainability against economy. Especially prominent was the change in narrative of the importance of just the will to work in a certain way when there are not the resources to do it. The change in suppliers, changing from small local producers to wholesalers, and changing initiatives, for example, of buying products for suppliers that were at the verge of becoming waste, but were used to do, for example, the dish of the day. These kind of initiatives were abandoned because of the constraints of fewer personnel and opening hours. So it has shown that sustainable gastronomy is very complex and is unfortunately very sensible to external factors such as the corona crisis. So finally, although it might seem that the storage spaces are just part of the restaurant equipment, when one looks at the practices surrounding this facility, it is fast discovered that they are at the center of the restaurant activity. Storage spaces, for example, restrict the amount of food that can be stored and therefore play an important part in planning and purchasing. The effectiveness of these spaces assure the quality of food and which kind of ingredients the restaurant can work with. For some restaurants, the storage spaces represent the personality of the restaurant and how they profile themselves. For example, if they have a wine cellar that is also used as a tourist attraction, if they have a meat fridge that is presented to the guests as a way of profiling themselves, or using an air cellar that talks about a tradition of Nordic way of cooking, Nordic cuisine. Also is within these spaces that food waste is also managed. So I would like to finish my presentation by saying that when opening the fridge of a restaurant, one opens the door to the whole restaurant operation. Thanks. I try to be very fast, so we are in time.
Thank you very much, Julia. Yes, of course, you was. So thank you very much for a so interesting communication. And now it's time for a few questions. Any question?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I do have a question, but thank you for your presentation. I really it was really interesting, like looking through storage, and that's maybe my question because I'm in France right now, and the question about storage is like really often it's quite hidden, and it will be the place where usually you don't really want customer to have a look. So it will be maybe about the methodology, like how was your approach to maybe convince or, like speak with the chefs and like, okay, I'm basically gonna study your storage and I'm gonna talk about it, and that will be the main focus. So yeah, that would be my question.
Yeah, this was a kind of funny because when I approached the restaurant chef, the first reaction is, what? Like, why do you want to study my storage? Like, my fridge is of no interest for no one. So, but what I try to explain is that we in the research community, I would say, we don't know how it works every day. So I try to approach in an ethnographic kind of way, so they didn't feel threatened. That I just wanted to see how it was done. That I wasn't there to judge whether they do it right or wrong, but just to document how the real work was done, just to see, so we know how it was done. And through that, I entered to a whole new world of how they think, how they work. Because when they open as I mentioned, they open the fridge, for example, once they have a bag on the floor in a freezer. So why do you have that bag there? Oh, well, because we do our stocks ourselves. So that way they freeze uniformly because we believe in cooking from scratch. So a whole narrative about how they work and how they believe sustainable working is came for this simple and, bag on the floor with a stock. So that was my approach.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Floramante.
Thank you. Your presentation is really interesting. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, your presentation is very interesting. However, I do not know, like as an anthropologist, I do not agree that the root cellarling or the earth cellarling is like, it comes from the Nordic tradition, because like before the age of exploration in Asian countries, especially in Korea, they do that to store their kimchi, even in Laos, in my field site, they do that in order to make some cold drinks. Actually, that's part of my presentation for today, like they dig some meters of land, under their houses, and they put their water bottles there to make natural cold drinks. So I do not know, maybe you need to search more that you should not attribute it to Nordic tradition, you need to expound more the history of it. And also maybe you can read Bubel and Bubel about it, Bubel and Bubel has a work about root cellaring, but you call it earth cellaring, So yeah, I think you need to, of course, maybe the Nordic people popularize it, but you really need not to exclude, the Eastern, the non-Western culture. That's it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you for your comment. Sorry if I didn't mean to say that it was unique to the northern countries. I just wanted to say that it was used before the advent of cold chain, and yeah, it sounds reasonable that every culture look for a way to store their own the products during season, changing in season. So I'm sorry if I made it sound that it was only a Nordic way of storing, but it's how the Swedish word is jordkällare, so the translation is earth cellar. So if it has a different name in a different country, of course it makes totally sense, because every culture has look for how to preserve their food through different seasons of the day. But thank you for the tip of the literature, and thank you for your comment.
Okay, yes, there is time for one last question. Yes, please.
So I was looking to your presentation, and what caught my attention is that the differences between what your research showed you and what we see here, our reality here in Brazil. Here, for example, restaurants are, they are kind of obliged to open their kitchen for customers who wants to know the storage and the whole process of food making. They can go to the kitchen and see the whole station of where the food is made. They have a whole set of equipments specific for these situations, and our sanitizing vigilance is very, very strict. A lot of things that I saw in your pictures wouldn't be allowed here, because they are they have very restrict imposes, and a lot of restaurants can even be closed by the government due to these refrigerants to these laws. So it was a big difference from these two realities.
Oh, thank you very much for your comment. Yeah, part of my study, because as I mentioned, it's just been, the analysis is just begun, so it's a preliminary analysis, preliminary results. But part of the analysis is from a cultural point of view, so try to understand it in their own context, not saying that it's the only way, but it's how it has been done here in Sweden so far, as a country, part of the Scandinavian region that has recently come as a potent culinary part of the world that hasn't been for a long time. This gastronomic revolution, as it has been called, started in the 80s. So there is still a movement, one could say. So, but yeah, it's a contextualized study to show the difference, because Sweden, as for a lot of parts of the world, especially down, not for the Scandinavia, seems a little exotic and people doesn't know how it works. That's also kind of what I'm aiming to show how it's done here, not to judge it especially, but how it's done more in an ethnographic kind of way.
Okay, thank you very much. We are really much over the time, so I have to stop questions here. And now it's time for Mr. Giuseppe Biagini from Tucson, Arizona, USA. You have, Giuseppe, if I'm not wrong, you have 2 presentations, 1 presentations and 1 book. So
yes.
Okay, so you have 20 minutes for your 2 presentations, and the floor is yours. So,
okay, thank you so much. So I'm not going to share the screen, but can you see my at the back of my shoulder? Yes. Okay, so this is a project that we are doing here in Southern Arizona, connected to trying to create a supporting project for farmer, ranchers, and gatherer, or small farmer, ranchers, and gatherer of the Southwest, and in particular now Southern Arizona. And this is a project done in partnership with several local partners like a government organization, the City of Gastronomy entity that promotes and defends the quality of the foods in this area, technology company, and tourist company. So there is quite a variety of group of people that are trying to understand how to create a powerful partnership to scale up sustainability. The origin of the project essentially starts in the late 90s when the Pima County, which is the county that manages the southern Arizona, started to develop a sustainable conservation plan for the desert, the Sonoran Desert, and created also a kind of a mapping of the spaces that need to be preserved for as open spaces, spaces for ranching, spaces for farming, and the gathering component is intermingled with the open spaces part. And then after that, while analyzing all the different opportunities that the arid land of the southern Arizona could offer in terms of food productions, they came up with a sustainable action plan for all the operations of the county. So not just ranching, farming, and gathering, but also any activity that relates to people that are employed by the county. And in particular also the tourism, how can the tourism be affected by the gastronomy, how the way we protect the land for farming, ranching, and gathering become a touristic attraction to the people. Then on top of that, they decided to create a dedicated space called the Southern Arizona Heritage Visitor Center that is a multimedia descriptor space where all the action plans are highlighted and the different measurements, the different approaches that are taken over the years. The plan is a 7-year plan, 8-year plan. And the different approaches are affecting the sustainability of the space. On the other, and the beauty of this project is that this is the only sustainable plan, is at least in the state of Arizona, that has measurable goals as annual reports that measure the advancement or the improvement that still needs to be made, and as a relation between the actions and the benefit to the community. In this scenario, the mission of the institute that I'm representing, the International Traditional Knowledge Institute Foundation here in the US, has exactly something very similar. That is, we want to make sure that all the artisanal food makers of the space, in particular artisanal farmer, ranchers, and gatherers, have an opportunity to continue producing their foods in a sustainable way. The Arizona, unfortunately, is one of those places where if you stopped importing foods, we will lose our food independence because we are mainly importing food either from Mexico or from California. Not much is done here. So a program that tries to create sustainability in food production locally, it's key. So we envision this common project, which is called Farmer, Ranchers, and Gatherers Southern Arizona, which, let me skip this, which has the main objective of strengthening the economic sustainability of local food systems. So we don't analyze just the single producer, but we try to see how they are interconnected in a value chain, both in terms of farmer, ranchers, and gatherer, but also who makes foods out of their production of farmer, ranchers, and gatherers, who transform them, and who finally eats them. The key objective of the project is to make sure that the marketing strategies we are proposing are no cost. Again, we are talking about very small, very artisanal food producers that could not afford any cost for understanding how they're doing things and making sure that what they do is available in terms of knowing that it's available to possible customer, either retail or wholesale. And another objective of the project is to make sure that all the participants have a way of cross-promoting each other. So again, being part of a similar value chain or the same value chain, they should be directly and indirectly helping whoever is their supplier and whoever is their customer in understanding all the members of the value chain. The approach also is bottom up. So we start from the artisan food makers, and then we go up to who use their output. Another element that was key to understand here is that the kind of farmer ranchers and gatherers we go after, again, being small, have very little time to dedicate to research activity, answer questions, participate to interview processes. So we created this new position called the knowledge seeker that essentially is a bridge between the farmer, rancher, and gatherer, which we call knowledge keeper, and the needs of the project to create a hub of information that can be shared and documented. So essentially, this is the objective of this is to make sure that the knowledge keeper dedicate the least amount of time to present themselves and to tell their story. Once the information of the production is into our database, we call it digital hub, then the information is available to whoever transformed that food and make it into a final consumable recipe or food product. Having partnered also the touristic department of the county, it's important that we highlight the importance of our gastronomy, uniqueness of our gastronomy, not just to the local people, but also to visitors coming to this area and want to understand the Southern Arizona gastronomy. So the platform that we are using is one created by the Institute that I represent. And as I was saying, contains several components. One is a digital library that essentially stores documents, videos, pictures, recordings that describe what a knowledge keeper does or how they do things. Within out of this digital library, there is an opportunity for the farmer or the rancher together to create a dedicated small specialized web site that describes who they are, what they do, and where they do it. And to the participant, we are going to offer some kind of a little booklet that describes how they fit within the gastronomy of the Southern Arizona, meaning what kind of special products they produce of the identifying products of the area, and also something about how they do it. Then there is a geotagged, each participant is geotagged so that we can build cultural itineraries that express the opportunity for a visitor to the Southern Arizona to meet with the producer, to meet with the people who transform the product, the local products, and eventually know even where a restaurant is where you can get a full meal. Another objective of the project is to make sure that this small artisan food producer has some information about the market, what the market wants, how they can improve what they're doing by extending their reach to customer, by saving some energy and so forth. And finally, we envision the training course and internships so that the knowledge seeker can learn how exactly to interact with them. Here is how the digital library looks like. It's a website that is ordered by ingredients, which also can be used on an app, so that even if you are traveling around town, around the area, you can always be in touch with your closest farmer, ranchers, and gatherer, or with the space where their products are available. As I was saying, there is a dedicated website to each participant, which can be reached through QR codes, which we offer to, again, to all the participants together to the booklet that represent what they do. There is also this business card where through a QR code, the user of that business card can go directly to the space on the internet or on the app where the farmer, ranches, and gatherer tells his story, shows his place, show his products. And the same thing on the last element here on my right is in case they participate to farmers market, they have a tabletop to present their story. In the phase that we are of the project, we are looking into 10 regional ingredients which are at the basis of the City of Gastronomy nomination of Tucson, which are mainly desert-based ingredients. When we will complete the project, we will create what we call an interactive book, where there is a standard part which is mainly historical, anthropological component that describes why we pick those 10 ingredients to represent the area. But at the same time, we connect each of those ingredients to the participant, and through QR code again, we can go and understand what the farmer, ranchers, gatherer is doing, is inventing, is changing, is transforming in his production, in his usage of the products. The geotagged itineraries, being close to a City of Gastronomy or UNESCO, is also connected to the certification program that the City of Tucson is doing, that controls how restaurants in this case, but also artisanal food producer, address the issue of growing foods in this area. So how sustainable they are, how resilient they are, how they treat their employee, and things like that are qualifying items for being certified as a restaurant or a food producer by the City of Gastronomy. As I was saying here, not only we offer information about how the possible customer or partners interact with their website, but also we help them in understanding how sustainable they are. What can they do to improve their usage of energy or production of energy so that they can become more and more efficient in this very stressful environment, which is the desert. The training, okay, it's 100% online, and it was created with the help of the Center for Regional Food Studies, University of Arizona. And the main objective, we have two nice features of this training program, which is one, every participant has a real track of what they do in supporting the project, which can be referenced in their CV. In the CV, you can really track what you have been doing for supporting a local knowledge keeper. And also even if you're coming from very many different disciplines, you will learn basic information about ethnographic interviewing, about writing information for online platforms, and create profiles about people's products, their products in the places where they produce their foods in an understandable way by any kind of participant. Of course, one of the key requirements is to learn the platform that we are using. The project started this May, okay, and now we have already created the first sets of booklets, the first sets of interview, and we are completing the online itinerary map for the participant of this phase. One of the items that we have discovered that was missing in the original design of the project is offering to the participant some kind of logistic or e-commerce support that all these artisanal food makers do not have, and they would really like to have. Here are some example of how members of the initial cohorts of Knowledge Keeper will look like on the web. This is a farmer, traditional farmer from the Hopi tribes. This is another traditional farmer from Mexico, actually, who produces in Mexico some maize, but transforms it here in Arizona. And this is a rancher, a miller, and this is a baker who is also a customer of that miller. And here is interesting to see how we try to connect and study the effect of the energy that moves between the nodes, between the producers, the customer and supplies in the value chain, and how packaging, how distribution can affect the energy consumption or the lack of sustainability in a particular product. So the objective of the project is to go through recipe, not just value chain by a single product. So how a particular restaurant recipe essentially can be mapped back to all the original ingredients, and all the study of how sustainable each ingredients are. It's a key element that we want to highlight and know more about. Anyone can participate in this project, no matter where you are. Actually, the first sets of interns that helped into this project were one in California, one was in Greece, one was in Italy, and everyone were helping Knowledge Keeper here in Southern Arizona. So in case you know people that are interested into the food shed of a desertic area like Southern Arizona, please indicate to them that we would love to hear from them. And here is my email or the email of my co-author of this project. I think that for this, I can stop here. And if you have questions, we can go into more details.
So yeah, there's time for questions. So it's your turn. If there is any, Sonia, maybe you speak.
Yeah, I also have one.
Sorry, who's speaking? Carolina, maybe?
I think it's, yeah.
Okay.
So I have a question because I'm interested in the value chain. Is my connection working? Can you hear me? Yeah, so yeah, I was very interested in that value chain. How's the, well, not every process, not the processing complete, but just maybe some insights about how you do that value chain. So how you explain it in the webpage.
So the idea of the value chain is to understand the effect of how a product is transformed by from the basic seeds all the way to a farming product, all the way to a transformation of whatever a farmer makes, all the way to whoever is the final user of that ingredient. So whether that be a customer, a user, you, I, buying and eating that food, or somebody in between, before us and after the producer people that are selling that ingredient, either raw or transformed into a recipe, being a restaurant, or packaged somewhere, whether they are a food retailer. And the reason why we try to map all this chains, which here is very simplified, is for each node, we try to understand what are the points of usage of energy in terms of electricity, in terms of water, in terms of waste recycle, or very alarming usage of energy like CO2 generating returns, chemicals, anything that might influence negatively the energy consumption of the product and affects negatively the energy value of the food product that is made here in the desert. Please remember that the desert is a very sensitive area. You have to really control each and every item that you use to make a food, and you have to be as efficient as possible. So this is a key study that the county likes to really understand where are the leaks into this value chain and how we can help in becoming more sustainable, the whole system, and less dependent on importing foods from other areas, from Mexico, from California, from every place else. Do you reply to your question?
Yeah, okay. Yes. Thank you very much.
So Xavier, I have a question.
Yes, Sonia.
Yes, I just want to know how does it work, the book, interactive book, how does it work exactly? Can you give us more details?
Yes, for example, in the next presentation, I'm going to talk about one that has been, this is not yet done, but this has been done, the cheese valleys of the Bergamo area. Inside the book as QR codes. When we talk about the cheeses and when we talk about here. See, for example, here you can see QR codes. These QR codes essentially send users that are reading the book to websites. And the website, in that case, it's a QR code for a cheese. So you can update the story of that cheese. You can update information, events about that cheese, a new recipe about that cheese, but the book remains the same. So if you want to know something new happening around that thing, you can simply use the QR code from the same book, use the QR code, go to the website, and figure out what's happening new around that person, that product, that place, a new itinerary. But now I'm anticipating myself for the next presentation. So anyway, the interactive part is the book is printed, but it's also connected to videos, to websites that essentially keep the information in the book always contemporary, always active, always real.
Okay, thank you, Giuseppe. The only problem is that you already consume almost your whole time in your first presentation. So may you just use do a
okay. Okay, so instead of talking about the book, why don't I simply show you a little video of one of the knowledge keepers that we interviewed here, which is a nice way of showing what is it that can become, let's see if I can make this work. Let's see.
Very short, please.
Very short, but if I am over my time, it's okay, Xavier. I don't need to go over it, to go overboard. This is a 3-minute thing, so if I'm overboard, I can stop it.
That's wonderful.
It's okay. So here it is. This is the story of some of the knowledge keepers that we are interviewing.
Raccoglievano la foglia per fare il letto alle mucche quando le rinchiudevano nella stalla. Io sono dell'Altareggio, ogni giorno ti appassioni di più vedendo anche poi i risultati come può essere lo Strachitun, un riconoscimento del lavoro europeo da tanto impegno. Ottenendo la DOP ovviamente è stato stilato anche un disciplinare, è stato creato un consorzio di tutela che è il consorzio di tutela Strachitun. Questo consorzio è stato creato in primis dai contadini perché sono loro quelli che producono il latte. È importante portare le vacche al pascolo perché prima di tutto fanno un po' di movimento che non gli fa male. Mangiano l'erba che vogliono e poi no, è tutta salute e poi si tiene pulito anche l'ambiente.
Lo Strachitun viene fatto con due paste differenti, che è una particolarità di questo prodotto. È nato perché ai tempi il contadino aveva magari 3 vacche e produceva una quantità di latte per fare 3 stracchini, per non farlo troppo alto o troppo basso ne avanzava un pochettino. Un giorno gli è venuto in mente di dire, per non buttarla, la mischiate, per quello che vengono chiamate 2 paste. Una era del giorno prima, una il giorno dopo. Queste 2 paste storicamente si dice che non si amano, quindi non si attaccheranno mai insieme. Quando viene bucato durante la stagionatura, questo spazio che c'è tra queste 2 paste dovrebbe favorire l'erbolinatura. Dovrebbe, perché anche proprio nel disciplinare c'è scritto che lo Strachitun può oppure non può essere erbolinato.
So the meaning of this video, that of course would have been much more meaningful if I had presented the whole book, is it's a way of indicating how the subject of the book is making sure the tradition of a particular space, like the Orobic Mountains, that were nominated UNESCO Creative Cities of Gastronomy just for the cheese last year. Those traditions are transferred from the old generation and new generation while keeping the important components of the gastronomy of the place active. So in that case is making sure that the cows or the goats, in this case it was only cows, but sometimes it's goats, do roam around into the open spaces of the beautiful mountains of the Orobic Alps. And in the book, we do a highlight for each of the traditional producers in that space, stories like that, which are kept alive by live interviews, by videos that the producer himself prepare, upload in their website so that they can present their activity and the news about what they're doing in their space. So anyway, of course, I didn't have time to talk about this book, but in case you are interested in seeing what it is, I can send you the PDF of it. It's not available on libraries or bookshops. So the only way you can have it, if you're interested, is I can send it to you via PDF. And what I would like to understand from this community is if a project like this could be of interest in other parts of the world or in other parts of their realm of studies. The platform is offered by the Institute, but with it's open source essentially. And so has no cost in using it, because for us it's mainly a way of documenting traditional practices and making sure that they are transferred to the next generations. So this is a very short, very concentrated presentation, Javier. I hope I did it fast enough.
May you send us the PDF the book, and we can forward the PDF to all people who like it.
Okay.
Organization of the Congress. So thank you very much, Giuseppe.
Thank you.
And now it's time for Luiza Giordani from Brazil. So you have 12 minutes and the floor is yours.
Okay. So, this work is the result of an ethnography I conducted for my master's thesis with immigrants and descendants of Italian immigrants in the city of Porto Alegre from March to December 2019. As a methodology, the techniques applied were participant observation, unstructured interviews, and qualitative research. I reached these individuals with the help of Italian Society of Rio Grande do Sul. During the realization of this ethnography, I had the opportunity to have as interlocutors Nero, who is a descendant of family from Italy to Brazil in 1890. He was born in Itapuca, which is in the mountain regions of Rio Grande do Sul, and he's married to Violeta. She is a descendant of immigrants who arrived in Brazil in 1892 and settled in the central region of Rio Grande do Sul. Marinho, who arrived in Brazil when he was 15 years old, accompanied by his parents and siblings, and he's married to Rosa. Rosa is the granddaughter of Italian immigrants who arrived in Brazil around the beginning of the 20th century and settled in the metropolitan region of Porto Alegre. And Camilla, who lived in her 50s at the age of 3, accompanied by her parents and her brother. So, although not the easiest of preparations, especially at the time of colonization, polenta was present at the table of Italians and their descendants in all daily meals. It was usually prepared for lunch, but depending on the consumption of the day, a second batch was also made at night, so it would be served at dinner and left over for breakfast the next day. For Nero, polenta is much more emblematic food in the north than in the south of Italy. He told me a passage that when the members of the Sul, descendants of the Italians from the south, went to participate in an event of Mussolini di Fiori, their descendants of the Italians of the north, they questioned the lack of bread on the table, and Nero replied, "What about bread? But there's polenta." When I spoke with Camilla, for example, about the most common preparations in her house when she was a child, what her mother always put at the table, polenta was one of the first foods to be mentioned. Hello? Sorry, I have an interruption in my computer. It was on the polenta was on the first foods to be mentioned. It was not the star of the meal, but it was there among other dishes. At her house, polenta was not made every day, nor consumed in every meal, and it was different. The preparation was different. It was soft, without great mixtures, usually accompanied by cheese and sometimes with sauce, but it was there recognized as one of the most emblematic foods of Italian cuisine that the family brought from Calabria to Brazil. At Marinho and Rosa's house, polenta has always been a star. It's no wonder that when returning to his hometown almost 30 years later, the first dish that Marinho wanted to eat was just the polenta, to the disappointment of his aunt, who wanted to serve him the best Italian dishes. The reception table had an abundance that Marinho had not seen in Italy before, since he left the country in just the midst of the greatest economic crisis in the history of the peninsula. But it was also the polenta that Marinho so much welcomed. It is known that the polenta, as we know today, came to Rio Grande do Sul with the Italian colonizers. Very poor and without access to wheat to make bread, they made polenta their most essential food. But the corn that they used were different from what they found in Brazil. The corn in Italy was different. They have a very white, like pearl preparation, while in Brazil we had a yellow paste made from cereal flour that was available in the new land. Since the beginning, polenta has always been seen as a food of the poor, peasants, and beggars. The authors Capati and Montanari claim that polenta was already a dish that was part of the farmer's menu even before corn arrived in Europe. In Roman times, it was made with spelta flour and called poles. As the crops of the region increased, so did the amount of grains with which the poles started to be made. The main one for a long time was barley, which was also used to make bread among the peasants and the poorest. Wheat and white bread belonged to the elites and wealthiest sections of the population at the time. Italy faced periods of great economic crisis, and polenta was the dish that presented on the table, especially among the poorest sections of the population, because it was cheap and its productivity was great. Gradually, the Italians were refining their food. The difficult times were left behind, the country was prospering, and the gastronomy was developing. Polenta went through periods of complete rejection associated with poverty and periods of difficulty. At that time, it was almost ostracized. Here I have a saying from Marinho saying that it was a dishonor to eat polenta. Why? Because it was an ordinary dish. Then I got the impression some 20 to 30 years from the 60s until more or less the 80s and the 90s that the polenta had disappeared from the menu. Over the time, the increased recognition of gastronomic regionalisms in Italy and the appreciation of emblematic foods, gradually polenta has resumed its place at the Italian table. But in this movement, it came back redesigned, resignifying, ceasing to be exclusive to the poor table and entering the spaces of the hot cuisine, the menus of expensive restaurants, and as an accompaniment to fine dishes. Also, Marinho says that polenta has emerged from a sophisticated food with sophisticated supplements, because there are certain restaurants that today serve good food with the side dish of polenta. The truth is that polenta is among the greatest names of Italian cuisine. Of the 10 Michelin-starred restaurants in Italy, at least 3 have polenta on their menu among other dishes, at prices range from 80 euros, the individual dish, to 275 euros, part of the full 7-stage tasting menu. During my field work, there were many accompaniments that I found for polenta among the speakers. Nero and Violetta, for example, talked about polenta with milk. At Nero's house, it was common as a night snack after dinner, where his mother would offer polenta with milk. The preparation was made from polenta brustolada, which is then crushed with a fork on a plate, among with milk and sugar. It almost became a porridge. Violetta ate the same preparation, also at night, but without sugar. They also talked about polenta with molasses, which was part of the snack during the children's play break. Polenta with cheese was also a sensation. All the interlocutors with whom I spoke told me that they ate polenta with cheese in one way or another. At Camelia's house, for example, soft polenta, still hot, came at the table with freshly grated Parmesan cheese on top. Marinho reports that his grandmother used to take to his father, him and his brother, in the countryside of Italy, a basket with breakfast where it had polenta, salami, and colonial cheese. Polenta with lard was preferred by the older ones. Both Nero and Violeta reported that they saw some of their relatives pass lard over the freshly cut slice of polenta and eat it afterwards, just like butter on bread. Soft polenta with cow meat, or chicken giblets sauce was common in larger meals like lunch or dinner. They were served separately, a plate with sauce and another plate with polenta, only when placing the food on the plate that the junction between the two occur. All these clippings and narratives show that, in addition to being a vigorous nutrition and healthy food, polenta is still versatile. It goes from morning to night, from sweet to salty, pleasing the most different tastes. I also found out polenta in popular culture. In the case of such a fundamental food among Italians and their descendants, polenta found out its space to be portrayed also among different aspects of popular culture. One of the most famous songs of the Italian colonial region is La Bella Polenta, which entitles this work. The song mentions the entire cycle of polenta, from being planted to being digested. With a cheerful and rhythmic momentum, the polenta is planted, grows, blooms, is cooked, cut, consumed, savored, and finished. It is sung by the chores at traditional festivals, at times when polenta goes to the table on occasions. Still related to food, Marinho introduced me to a song well known in the Friulian region of Italy, entitled La Mula di Parenzo. Its date of origin is unknown, but is somewhat, in an unusual way, it's a love song. At various times the food is mentioned, but the passage that Marinho presented says the following: if the sea was a sauce and the hills were polenta, imagine what a wonder would be polenta and cod. I also found out that a lot of Italian love songs mention food. In Rio Grande do Sul, on the other hand, a common term in the mountain region is polenteiro. It's used as a slang among descendants of Italian immigrants. I'm sorry. Talking to some of my interlocutors, I found out different meanings for the term. The first one is used to a very gallant young man who is constantly praising the girls. The second refers to a grumpy person who is always in a bad mood, stuffed. There's always a third sense used. This makes direct reference to the way polenta was seen as inferior food, of lesser prestige, and among individuals. Being a polenteiro literally means eating a lot of polenta, but is used as a pejorative way where the individual is mocked for not being able to afford to eat something else. Polenta has also been honored by, in Italian painting. Pietro Longhi was a painter who was born in Venice in 1701. His work was dedicated to portraying scenes from everyday life at the time without satirical or critical claims. The painting entitled La Polenta dates from, it's here on my presentation, dates from 1740 and was one of the painter's first works after completing his training with the painter Antonio Balestra. The work is part of permanent collection of the Museo of the Settecento Veneziano, located in Venice, Italy since 1935. As it should be, polenta is also has celebratory festivals. In Brazil, the biggest one is in the state of Espírito Santo, which has 41 editions until 2019. I was unable to find if they had an edition in 2020 due to COVID pandemic. In Italy, there is also several festivals dedicated to polenta, and the biggest one, the Festa della Polenta, is in Tuscany, with a history of more than 400 editions. In conclusion, one of the discoveries that surprised me the most during this ethnographic was the strong presence of polenta showed on the tables of different interlocutors. In general, polenta is recognized as a dish from the northern Italy, and because the first immigrants who colonized Rio Grande do Sul left there, its frequency on the dish of Italian colonial food is quite remarkable in the most different meals. However, polenta also appears in the southern Italy table. The circumstances of its journey to the colonial table are very similar, which made the dish mandatory presence for settlers from all regions of Italy. Polenta has become an emblem, which has gone from garbage to luxury, which has been reframed over the decades, which today appears in different guises without losing its essential essence. Polenta is also not only an essential dish, but it moves emotions and feelings, passes through memory, and traces its path to the past. It works as a bridge between what is gone with the ancestors and what is brought to the next generations. It's a strong root full of meanings, identities, belonging. When arriving in Italy, when you can eat absolutely anything and you choose polenta as the preferred food, it demonstrates the strength and importance polenta has in the individual's memory and life. This is the moment when food ceases to be mere food that nourishes the body. This is the moment that the importance of the symbolic property that food has is observed, as it starts to feed feelings and emotions, memories and identities. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Luiza. Unfortunately, we are very much over the time. We are particularly delayed. So is there any very quick question, only one, to this presentation?
Xavier, can I?
Yeah,
yes,
very short.
Very quick, very quick. I just want to know if there is polenta with seeds.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Is there polenta with seeds, not with maize?
With seeds.
Seeds, blé.
Which seeds?
With flour.
It's maize flour. We use maize flour, but there's a difference between the maize used that people used to use in Italy before colonization, and the maize that we use here among the centuries. Our maize is yellow, which gives this yellow tone to the dish. And in Italy, you can find both the white one and the yellow one.
Yes, because we have exactly the same in Tunisia, but not with maize. It's just with seeds, blé.
Yeah, we don't use the seeds. We make a flour with the seeds, and then we prepare the polenta.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Luiza. And now it's time for Floramante Ponce from the Max Planck Institute for Social Anthropology. So the floor is yours, Floramante. We have just, well, your 12 minutes, and the floor is yours.
Okay, can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
How to play it. So good morning, everyone. So my name is Floramante Surgeon Ponce. I'm a PhD candidate from the Max Planck Institute for Social Anthropology in Halle, Germany, and I am part of the research group Electric State Making in the Greater Mekong subregion. So the title of my presentation is all about transformations in food quality and quantity in the Chinese hydropower resettlement in northern Laos. By the way, I am not a Lao, but I am a Filipino, so I study my own Southeast Asian country, you know. And before I will discuss the content of my presentation, so I will present first the background of it, and also the short information about my field site and research methods, and also the new development that has been experienced by the people that I interviewed, and also how those developments, especially the electric connection, has impacted the changes in food quality, and also how the relocation has changed the food quantity of the people I interviewed. And a brief conclusion will be presented at the end. So by looking at the figure, the number of hydroelectric dams in Laos has increased significantly since the 1990s. And the Laos state is optimistic that constructing dams through exportation of electricity can boost the national economy and turn the country into the battery of Asia. And the Laos state also believes that the resettled people will be the ultimate beneficiaries of progress through hydropower development, especially through electrification, access to roads and markets, and sustainable livelihoods, and among others. So labeled as part of China's Belt and Road Initiative, the Namto 1 hydropower project has resettled more than 10,000 people from 37 villages in Bokoi province and Luang Namta province in northwestern Laos. So this is the largest single internal resettlement project in Lao history. And because of the secretive nature of Chinese projects and the secretive nature of the post-socialist Lao state, an ethnography of the lives of the Namto 1 resettled people has not been done to date. So by looking at the map, my field site and the hydropower dam are located in the northwestern most of Laos and sharing boundaries with China, Myanmar, and Thailand. And for those who are familiar with the infamous Golden Triangle, that special economic zone is located in Bokoi province. So my field site is in Hardmok, and it is the Namto 1's largest resettlement, and it has more than 3,000 inhabitants or 566 households. So the picture in the slide is the aerial view of the resettlement from the company's calendar. So the Namto 1 divided the resettlement into 3 zones. So I made sure that I interviewed more than 20% of households per zone. So in total, I interviewed 128 households, and mostly in this paper, I interviewed most mothers because, as we all know, in Asia and as similar to other places in Asia or in other countries, mothers are considered as caretakers of kitchens. And these interviews enabled me to determine whether a particular narrative is a representative or a unique case. So the data for this paper were gathered during 14 months of ethnographic fieldwork in the Hardmok resettlement between 2018 and 2019. I mainly relied on quantitative data collection because I am an anthropologist, such as participant observation, group discussions, and in-depth interviews. I also managed to interview some state officials and some Laos state and Chinese staff and managers of the Namto 1 company. I deliberately changed all the names of my interlocutors and do not mention the names of their old settlements to protect their privacy. So my interlocutors cited 4 major infrastructural developments that they have experienced in the new village. The first one is road. Before, in the old village, motorboat was the main mode of transportation, and it took them a day or more to go to Waisai, which is the provincial capital of Pokeo, to go to the market, bigger hospitals, and secondary and technical schools. And because they are now connected to roads in the new village, it only takes them 2.5 hours to 3 hours going to the provincial capital during summer, but during rainy season, it is longer because the roads are impassable due to muds and flash flooding. So more or less, it takes 4 to 5 hours. In the new village also, many villagers are very thankful because they have primary and secondary schools and public health center compared before. And one of the newest thing they have now in the resettlement is the presence of internet and mobile phone signal. Thanks to this, because of this internet connection, I am still connected to them, and I'm really updated with the issues and events happening there. So in the old village, they were not connected to the grid, and thus they had no electricity. Some well-off villagers before, they used solar panels, mechanical dynamos, or generators powered by gasoline. However, they only experienced electricity for less than 2 hours per day in the old settlements. Meanwhile, the poor and the abject villagers mostly used gasoline lamps before. Though the villagers are now connected to roads, market, internet, among others, I focus on electricity to highlight its paradox to their lives. So the production of electricity through dam construction displaced them, but the new consumption of electricity has also helped them to adjust. But those, of course, the grid connection has also changed the quality of food. If I say quality of food, it's the way how they experience tasting healthy, safe, and safe food, and how these kitchen appliances have also changed the the preparation, the consumption, and even the storage of their food. So as you can see in the table, these are the new appliances that I tabulated from my interlocutors. And because of the time constraints, I will only discuss the top 3 appliances possessed by my interlocutors. So the top one is refrigerator. And to be honest, I was very surprised because I thought before I went to the field that the refrigerator is it's a positional good. It means that maybe it's expensive and other people do not own it. And I assumed that only affluent villagers possess it. But when I was in the field, I was wrong because they got money from the company, from their 3 compensation. And also, they bought secondhand refrigerators. And those things allow them to possess refrigerators. And as I mentioned earlier, like they purchased these refrigerators not because of conspicuous consumption or showing ostentation, but because of some practical reasons. And the first reason is for storing food due to the lack of market and the resettlement. So in the new village, they always told me like, you know, they don't have market, they don't have food sources. So before in the past, when they want to get some bamboo shoots or they want to get some fish, they can just go to the river or they can just go to the mountain, you know. But now in the new village, they're very far from their former food sources and they have no market there. So it's more practical to store food, to buy some food in the market once or twice a month, and they store it in the refrigerator. And well, as I discussed earlier, the market from the district capital and from the provincial capital, they're very far from the new settlement. Second one is for their livelihoods. Now, because of electricity, it enables some new forms of productive activities. So now, because like for instance, the people who own this ice machine, they can store now their ice, the produced ice, to the freezers and to refrigerators. And also the ice cream owner in the new village also, because of electricity, they can produce ice cream. And because of the refrigerator, they can store those ice creams in the freezers and the refrigerators. And also now they can eat some frozen food like frozen meat. Before they said, my interlocutors were saying that they were eating natural food from the mountain, from the rivers. But now they were eating a lot of frozen food from chemical foods, you know. So the quality of the food that they are eating have really changed big time. And also, refrigerators is important for making cold drinks. Before in the past, they only make natural cold drinks. First is by the root cellaring. Second is by getting some spring water from the mountain, and they're storing it in the guard bottle. They also put the guard bottle in the river to make it cold. Before, if you serve cold water or cold drinks, it is a sign of economic status or modernity because they can only purchase ice before from the provincial capital and the former villages, you know, since they used motorboat before, it took them 1 day to go back and forth. But now in the new village, the sign of affluence in serving drinks has changed. So it's not only about serving cold drinks, but it's about serving drinks with many options. So ranging from water, beer, soda, to milk, to tea and everything. And they should serve it in a modern way. So modern way in the sense like they use this water dispenser with hot and cold options. So it's no longer the cold drinks, exclusively cold drinks, but it's about having choices, you know, having different choices through new electrical appliances. And of course, this practice of making natural drinks have been changed. Practices of making natural drinks have been changed because of the presence of refrigerators and freezers. Two things, because now they're very far from the mountain where they get the spring water. Now they have no land to do this root cellaring. And of course, for them, it's easier to buy ice than making natural cold drinks. And some people were telling me, you know, like, electricity really makes us lazy, which is, it is very contradictory with the normal picture that we have in our mind that, you know, electricity makes people productive. But it is not in the case of in the statement of my interlocutors, you know, electricity really makes them lazy, according to them. And the preference for cold drinks, for them, if you consume a lot of artificial cold drinks from refrigerators or freezers, it really destroys the balance between the whole hot and cold within the bodies. In Asian societies, in Laos or in China, you know, they believe that there should be a balance of hot and cold, you know. So if you consume too much artificial cold drinks from refrigerators, it really drains all the hot things within your body. And if that would be the case, you might get some colds or disease, you know, like for instance, for a sick person, you will be more sick. For a pregnant woman, you will be having difficulty in labor. For a peripheral mothers, it might have some impact to your health. It may cause, for some interlocutors, they said that drinking cold drinks among peripheral mothers may cause what is this, like postpartum depression, you know. And also for the children, in the morning, they are not allowed to drink cold drinks, artificial cold drinks, because it will give them stomach ache. And same with the old people, you know. And in terms of cooking with fire and electricity, in general, the old people, they yeah, I know, 5 minutes there. So 1 minute, okay. So among old people, they prefer to cook with firewood because firewood gives them aroma, gives them smoky aroma. It provides natural taste, and it's more delicious than cooking hot pot or electric hot pot. And the meat is more tender than the one cooked in electric hot pot. But for the younger people, they favored the use of electric hot pot, and because it is more the rapid cooking is more advantageous during rush hours or when they run out of firewood or charcoal. And it is the heat is more manageable in electric hot pot, and it doesn't produce smoke. But of course, for them, it's more dangerous because when you touch the electricity, you will get burned and shocked. But if you touch the firewood, you will only get shocked. And for them, the presence of electric hot pot increases commensal practices. For the rice cooker, last one, the people, they prefer to cook the sticky rice with firewood because it can save time and electricity and money. But for non-glutinous rice, you know, they prefer to cook it with rice cooker because it is more comfortable and they can, the cooking is more even. But of course, like, I mean, the people who have electricity, they can really look forward for their food quality. But the people who are poor, you know, I mean, those who are victimized by the relocation, you know, they experience hunger and poverty. They eat a lot of MSG, bouillon powder noodles, and for means they call it proletarian hunger killer. Sometimes some people they also eat their domestic dogs and cats, and some people they use amphetamines to cope hunger. And those resettled villagers who struggle to have food on their plate have severely limited capability to monitor and improve their food quality. And for the conclusion, this exploration unfolds the food consumption stories of both losers and winners of the resettlement, or those who become more abject after the relocation, and those who enjoy the new electric infrastructure, respectively. Thank you. Sorry for the overtime.
With that, I'm very sorry, but we are very much over the time. And it's time just for one question, maybe a very short question, because we had to change the floor and go to the official opening of this meeting, you know, the floor. So if there is any question for Floramante, now is the time.
Yes, I have a question. When you mentioned about the quality of the food, because it's a quantity and quality, and then you mentioned that they started to eat frozen food, and you just mentioned that they changed the quality. How do you assess this change in quality as an increase or a decrease of quality that they now rely on the marketplace and not the, I don't want to say natural resources, but not the mountains and the other sources that you mentioned? How do you assess this change?
assessing changes is not my goal here, but describing, you know, by quality, you cannot assess the change in quality, you know, like by just doing quantitative stuff. I know what you want to say, you know, like what are the quantitative methods, or, you know, in order to assess that the quality of food have changed. But by simply like saying, like, before they're eating natural food and now they're eating, you know, they're eating this frozen food, it's a change in quality, you know. And even with the how they prepare cold drinks to, you know, before and now, I mean, there is a change in quality, of course. But of course, the question of measuring or assessing how the changes occurred, it's another research question, you know.
Yes, well, I understand your point. I just wonder, because if you're saying there is a change in quality, then, well, I just assume that you will have, well,
I am an anthropologist.
Maybe according to them. I'm not saying that you are the one assessing, but according to them.
That's I already mentioned. According to them, you know, before they eat a lot of natural food, and now they eat frozen food, and there is a change in quality. Of course, for them, they believe, like, if you eat a lot of artificial food, it's not healthy to your body. But you have no choice. But they have no choice because, well, they don't have food sources before, and consuming this artificial food, it's more cheaper. It's cheaper than, you know, than buying the natural food. But, thank you. I hope it addresses your question.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much to everyone. We are very much over the time. So it's time to close this first session. I apologize, of course, for all the technical problems from this morning. As you know, we are trying to do malabarism in between the virtuality and in presence here in the real floor and the virtual floor. And real and virtual are not possible to be together. So people who was here in the real floor is now right now in another room watching TV, watching you on TV. So finally, thank you very much. We had to go right now to the second place, which is the real official opening of this meeting. And after that, see you at 12 o'clock in our second session in English in this same room. So thank you very much, and see you later, or see you right now.